Okay, let's be honest for a second. How many times a week do you see a headline screaming about a landmark trial or a historic legal battle in the tech world?
Oh, all the time. It's basically background noise at this point.
Right. It happens so often that the words just kind of lose their punch. I'm your host, by the way, and welcome to our deep dive.
And I'm your resident tech expert, thrilled to be here. But yeah, you're right. It's the boy who cried wolf of the tech industry.
Yeah.
Every single antitrust lawsuit is pitched as the big one.
Until it fizzles out, or they just settle quietly and nothing changes.
Exactly.
But today, we are looking at something completely different. We are digging into a federal jury trial involving Meta and YouTube that legal experts, and I mean serious people who don't usually use hyperbole, are calling social media's big tobacco moment.
And that analogy, it isn't just a catchy headline for clicks. It's actually the core legal strategy here.
Which is fascinating.
It really is. Because if you remember, when the tobacco industry finally faced the music back in the 90s, it wasn't just because cigarettes were bad for you. It was because the companies actually knew nicotine was addictive, they hid that fact, and they optimized the product to keep people hooked.
And that is exactly what we're unpacking today. We're doing a deep dive into the first ever jury trial, directly accusing these platforms, specifically Instagram and YouTube, of knowingly designing addictive products targeting minors.
Right.
The mission today is to really understand this. Are we actually witnessing a massive shift in industry accountability, or is it just another lawsuit?
Let's find out.
Let's do it. Let's jump right into the first slide, which is simply titled Breaking Legal Ground. Now, this sets the table, but I want to push back on this immediately. Tech companies get sued literally every day.
They do.
So what makes this specific legal argument, the one right here on this slide, different from the usual stuff?
That is the right question to start with. Usually when you hear about lawsuits against Facebook or YouTube, they're about content.
Like moderation stuff.
Right. Someone posted something terrible, maybe it's a defamation case or a copyright strike, and the argument is that the platform didn't take it down fast enough.
And usually those lawsuits fail because of Section 230, right, that law from the 90s that basically says platforms aren't responsible for what their users post.
Precisely. Section 230 is their shield. It's practically invincible against content claims. But if you look at the text on this first slide, the accusation here isn't about content at all.
No, it says product liability.
Exactly. It's about product liability. The claim is that the app itself, the code, the design, the mechanics, is defective.
So just to clarify this for everyone watching, they aren't suing because a kid saw a bad video.
Nope.
They are suing because the app was built to force the kid to keep watching any video.
That is exactly the distinction. The slide highlights the phrase, knowingly designing addictive products. That's the big tobacco link right there.
Wow.
They are arguing that features like the infinite scroll and autoplay are the digital equivalent of, say, adding ammonia to cigarettes to increase the nicotine uptake. It's an engineering choice. It's not a content choice.
That is a massive distinction. It effectively sidesteps the whole free speech debate entirely and makes it about consumer safety.
Yes.
It's like suing a car manufacturer because the brakes failed, rather than suing the driver who crashed the car.
It treats the algorithm like a physical machine that lacks a safety guard. And let me tell you, that is a very dangerous argument for Silicon Valley to face in front of a jury.
Which brings us to the actual human cost of that machine. Let's move to the second slide here, titled Kaylee's Story. Now, usually in these deep dives, we talk about data and big numbers, but this slide focuses entirely on one single person.
And this is a crucial part of any jury trial strategy. You really have to anchor the abstract concepts in a real human face. You can't just talk about users, right? You have to talk about a victim. And Kaylee is the plaintiff here.
Looking at the timeline on this slide, it's heavy. It starts with phase 1, age 10. 10 years old. The slide says she gained unrestricted access to Instagram before age restrictions were effectively enforced. I mean,
It's young.
10 seems incredibly young to be navigating that world alone.
It is. But biologically speaking, it's also the worst possible time. At 10 and going into those early teen years, the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that handles impulse control, risk assessment, long-term planning,
It's just not fully developed yet.
still under construction,
Yes.
completely offline in terms of maturity.
But the emotional part of the brain is online, right?
Oh, absolutely. The limbic system, which processes reward and social validation, that is firing on all cylinders. So what you have is basically a Ferrari engine with
With bicycle brakes.
Exactly. bicycle brakes.
That's a terrifying image. And the slide moves right into phase 2, early addiction. It lists the specific features we were just talking about: infinite auto-scrolling and algorithmic recommendations.
We take the infinite scroll completely for granted now, but think about the psychology of that for a second. When you read a book, you get to the end of a chapter. When you read a newspaper, you hit the bottom of the page.
Right, there's a natural end.
That's a stopping cue.
Right.
It's a natural signal to your brain to decide, do I want to continue or do I want to go make a sandwich?
Or go to sleep.
Right. The infinite scroll removes that stopping cue entirely. It's designed to be completely frictionless. So for a 10-year-old brain that's already craving validation and lacks that prefrontal braking system, there is literally no signal to stop.
And the result of that is phase 3, which is listed here as long-term harm. The slide lists severe anxiety, depression, body dysmorphia, and suicidal ideation. It's not just that she wasted time on her phone, it's that her reality was warped.
It was. And look at the bottom of the slide here. It notes that Kaylee exemplifies thousands of similar stories.
Right, she's a representative.
This is so important because the defense will always try to say, well, maybe this one particular user had pre-existing issues. Maybe it's a parenting issue. But by framing her as a representative of an entire generation, the plaintiffs are saying, no, this is a systemic failure caused by the product itself.
It frames it as a public health crisis, not just a personal failing.
Precisely.
Okay, so that's the core accusation. You built a trap, and it caught our kids. Now, let's look at how the other side is defending themselves. Let's go to the next slide, Zuckerberg's testimony.
This is high drama. You have Mark Zuckerberg, under oath, facing a federal jury. You can almost feel the tension in the room just looking at this summary on the screen.
The slide breaks down his defense strategy. And I have to say, looking at this key admissions box here, it really feels like he's walking a tightrope over a canyon.
He absolutely is.
Yeah.
Because he admitted, and honestly, he had to admit this because the internal data exists, that Instagram once prioritized increasing user time. That was the main metric.
But here is the pivot, right? The slide calls it changed priorities. His argument is essentially, yes, we used to care about time spent, but we changed.
Right, the current denial. He claims the metric is now meaningful interactions and utility. Basically saying, we don't want you doom scrolling, we want you connecting with friends and family.
Do you actually buy that? I mean, strictly from a business perspective.
A very tough sell.
Yeah.
These platforms run on targeted ads. Ads require eyeballs. The longer those eyeballs are glued to the screen, the more money you make, period.
Yeah.
If you truly prioritize utility over time spent, you are arguably hurting your own bottom line.
And that leads directly to the enforcement reality section of this slide. This is where the defense gets really messy. Zuckerberg conceded that it is practically difficult to enforce age bans. He admits that kids under 13 are actively on the platform.
Which creates a massive logical trap for him. If you admit, kids are there, and you admit you can't really kick them off the platform, then you have a heightened legal responsibility to ensure the product isn't dangerous for them.
You can't just throw your hands up.
No, you can't say, well, they aren't supposed to be here, so it's not our fault the machine is addictive.
Right. It's like owning a swimming pool with no fence around it and saying, well, I put up a no trespassing sign, so if a neighborhood kid falls in, it's entirely on them.
Exactly. But in this case, the pool is filled with candy and designed to look exactly like a playground.
That is a great analogy, and pretty terrifying. Now, usually in these kinds of trials, it's just one person's word against another.
Until the documents come out.
Right, until the documents come out. So let's move to the next slide. Internal documents reveal tensions.
The smoking gun slide. This is where the deep dive really pays off. It's not just about what they said on the witness stand. It's about what they actually measured in the office.
The contrast here is so stark. On the stand, Zuckerberg says, we don't care about time spent. But look at this 2016 evidence mentioned on the slide.
This is a direct email directive from Zuckerberg himself. He explicitly aimed to increase time spent on Meta apps by 12% over 3 years.
12%, which, 12% doesn't sound like a massive number in isolation. Like, if I increase my coffee intake by 12%, literally nobody cares.
But in the context of billions of users,
Yeah.
that is colossal. We are talking about billions of additional hours of human attention. And notice the metric there. It wasn't, let's increase meaningful conversations by 12%.
It was time spent.
Raw consumption, that was the North Star metric.
But the defense argument, which we see play out in tech all the time, is always, well, that was 2016, that's ancient history, we've evolved since then.
Which is exactly why the second point on this slide is the nail in the coffin. Look at the 2022 evidence.
Yeah, 2022 is basically yesterday in legal terms. And this is an internal memo from Adam Mosseri, the head of Instagram.
And look at what it says. It cites engagement as a primary goal, specifically targeting the teen demographic.
So while the CEO is sitting there telling the jury, we prioritize well-being, the guy actively running the app is telling his team, get the teens to watch more.
It exposes the fundamental tension between public relations and business reality. The internal documents strongly suggest that when safety clashes with growth, growth wins every time.
And that tension is exactly what the plaintiffs are weaponizing here. They aren't just saying the product happens to be bad. They are saying the company is actively deceiving the public about its true intentions.
It proves scienter.
Scienter.
Yeah, intent. That's a key legal concept in these cases. It's the difference between a tragic accident and a calculated strategy.
Speaking of strategy, let's look at how the lawyers are framing this for the jury. The next slide is titled, The Legal Strategy, Digital Casinos.
This metaphor is incredibly sticky. We mentioned big tobacco earlier, but digital casinos might be even more accurate when we talk about the actual mechanism of the app.
I've heard this comparison thrown around before, but the slide breaks down the specific design intent. It mentions variable rewards. Can you unpack that for us? What exactly is a variable reward?
Sure. This goes all the way back to B.F. Skinner and basic behavioral psychology, the Skinner box.
Yeah.
If you press a button and you get a treat every single time, you eventually get bored. It becomes totally predictable.
Right.
But if you press a button and sometimes you get a treat, sometimes you get nothing, and sometimes you get a huge jackpot treat, you will press that button until you pass out.
That's literally a slot machine.
Exactly. And that is what a notification is. When you see that little red dot on your app icon,
Yeah.
or you pull down to refresh the feed, you don't know what you're going to get. Is it a like? Is it a DM from a crush? A viral video? Or is it nothing?
The anticipation.
That uncertainty triggers a massive dopamine spike.
And the slide lists those exact features: infinite scroll, algorithmic manipulation. These aren't just features added for our convenience. They are the lever of the slot machine.
And the plaintiffs are arguing that Meta hired actual PhDs in psychology to perfect that exact lever. They engineered this defective product to exploit the biological vulnerability of a developing brain.
The slide also mentions industry ripple effects down here, and it notes something very interesting. TikTok and Snap have already reached confidential settlements.
Yeah, that is the tell.
Explain that. Why is that a tell?
In civil litigation, if you truly believe your legal argument is rock solid, you usually fight it out. You want to set the precedent.
Sure.
But if you look at your own internal emails and realize, if a jury actually sees this, we are completely dead. You settle. TikTok and Snap looked at the liability, looked at their own documents, and just wrote a check to make it go away.
But Meta and YouTube are fighting it.
Why? Two main possibilities. One, they think they can win on a legal technicality. Maybe they think they can still hide behind Section 230 if their lawyers argue it just right.
Okay, in the second?
Two, the cost of actually changing their business model is so high that a settlement wouldn't fix the core issue. If they lose this trial, they might have to redesign the entire app.
That's a great point. If the court-ordered cure is turning off the infinite scroll, that completely breaks the revenue machine.
Exactly. They might literally be fighting for the survival of their current business model.
Wow. Now, trials aren't just about facts and documents. They are about theater. Let's look at the next slide. Zuckerberg's demeanor and the backlash.
This brings back the human element. Zuckerberg has a certain reputation.
The slide mentions he admitted to receiving extensive media coaching. I mean, obviously, every CEO gets coached before taking the stand. Why is this a specific point of attack on the slide?
Because the plaintiffs are actively trying to paint him as inauthentic. Think about it. When you are accused of running a cold, calculating machine that hurts children, if you act like a cold, calculating machine on the witness stand, it just reinforces their entire narrative.
The uncanny valley effect.
Right. The slide notes he was trying to balance corporate messaging with appearing human. That is a very, very hard thing to do when you are being grilled about teen suicide and addiction.
Yeah, I can imagine.
If you just stick to the script saying, we prioritize meaningful interactions over and over, you sound robotic and uncaring. But if you break the script and actually show real emotion, you might accidentally admit legal liability.
And the slide highlights the broader context here. This trial isn't happening in a vacuum. We have the whistleblower leaks from Frances Haugen. We have the endless Senate hearings.
The jury is very aware of the cultural mood right now. The tech lash is real. 10 years ago, tech founders were heroes. They were the brilliant innovators changing the world. Now they are viewed with deep, deep suspicion. Zuckerberg has to overcome that massive presumption of guilt, and his demeanor on the stand is a huge part of doing that.
It really feels like the walls are closing in a bit on the industry. It's not just one isolated lawsuit, it's a reckoning. Which brings us to the highest stakes slide. So let's zoom out for a second. Why should you, the listener, care about this specific trial?
The slide lists three major outcomes. First is legal precedent.
Which we touched on at the start, redefining the algorithm as a product.
If the jury decides that an algorithm can indeed be a defective product, it opens the floodgates. Suddenly, every single app, every video game, every news feed could be held legally liable for addiction. It completely bypasses the content immunity shield. It would be the biggest change to internet law in 20 years, easily.
That is massive. The second point on the slide here is platform redesign. This is the one that affects us, the users, directly every day.
Right, think about what a legally safe version of Instagram actually looks like. Maybe there is no autoplay at all. Maybe you literally have to click next to see a new video. Maybe notifications are batched and only delivered once a day at 5 p.m.
It sounds incredibly slow.
It sounds like a tool, right?
Yeah.
Not a trap. But for the companies, it sounds like a massive drop in revenue.
And the third point on the slide is generational impact, a moment of reckoning.
This goes right back to the tobacco analogy. There was a time when people smoked on airplanes. It was totally normal. Doctors smoked in television ads.
It's crazy to think about now.
Exactly. We might look back at this era where we just let 10-year-olds walk around with dopamine slot machines in their pockets without a second thought and say, what in the world were we thinking?
It feels like we were right at that tipping point right now. The norms are shifting under our feet.
And this trial could be the earthquake causing that shift.
So bringing it all together, let's look at the conclusion slide. We have this massive conflict laid out. On one side, a tech giant claiming they pivoted to meaningful interactions.
And on the exact opposite side, a mountain of internal documents showing a relentless, highly quantified drive for teen engagement.
And stuck right in the middle is Kaylee, and thousands of kids just like her who suffered real documented harm during their most biologically vulnerable years.
The contradictions are completely out in the open now. The tension between profit and safety isn't theoretical anymore. It's hard evidence in a courtroom. And the jury now has to decide which side of history they want to be on.
It really is a fascinating case. And honestly, looking at these slides, the evidence is so much starker than I initially expected. For those of you watching, I highly encourage you to pause the video and really read those internal emails on the previous slides.
It challenges you to think about your own relationship with these apps too, not just for the kids, but for yourself. How often do you reach for that phone in your pocket without even thinking about it?
Which brings us to our final thought for today. We've talked a lot about safety, regulations, product liability, and lawsuits. But here's a question I want to leave you with, something for you to mull over after this deep dive.
Let's hear it.
The sources talk about a path forward where human welfare comes before algorithmic optimization. That sounds amazing. But if the industry is legally forced to prioritize safety over engagement, and engagement is exactly how they sell ads, what does the business model actually look like?
That is the billion-dollar question right there.
Is it even possible to have a free app, one that doesn't charge you a monthly subscription, that doesn't trade on hacking your attention? If they can't hook you to look at ads, how do they pay for the servers?
It's the classic digital dilemma. If you aren't paying for the product, you are the product. If we truly want safe social media, we might have to be willing to actually pay for it out of pocket.
Or maybe the era of free social media is the actual root of the problem. Something to think about next time you're scrolling and scrolling.
And scrolling.
Or trying to stop scrolling.
Right. Thanks for diving into this with us today. Check out the slides, draw your own conclusions about the evidence, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.
Stay curious.